Have you seen a man walking on a high road before? Normally, he will use a long pole to balance himself. Imagine if there is a bird land on his pole at his left side of his pole. What will he do? He will actually shift his pole on the right side so that he will rebalance himself in order not to fall down. Now, the same thing will happen to a chemical reaction that is at equilibrium. When you change a system which is already at equilibrium, it will shift to the left or right in order to offset the change. Hi, welcome back to Siri Peshara Kimia Awak. In this video, we are going to look at what is Chatelier principle and what is the use of it and how to use it to predict the direction for the net reaction if we change the system at equilibrium. So Chatelier principles actually tell us if we change a system that is already at equilibrium, the system will shift to the left or right to offset the change. Now, what are the types of change that we have here? It may be change in concentration, change in pressure, and also change in temperature. So for the last video, we have learned about how a system responds to the change in concentration and pressure. So for this video, we're going to focus on how a system already at equilibrium responds to the change in temperature and the adding of catalysts.
Now, before we look at the effect of the changes in temperature, we need to know the difference between exothermic reaction and endothermic reaction. So from the name exo is very similar to exit. Exit means going out. So we are talking about heat is going away from the reaction. So we are focusing on the forward reaction basically. And how do we know that is an exothermic reaction? We look at the delta H, the enthalpy information. If the delta H has a negative value, then it is an exothermic reaction. So let's say we have an example here. This is a Haber process. So delta H is negative 91.8. So negative means exothermic reaction. So heat is released. Exo means going out. Heat is going out. So if we want to put the heat in the equation, so when we react in the forward reaction, meaning that nitrogen reacting with hydrogen producing ammonia. So when they produce the product which is ammonia, they are also producing heat at the same time because heat is released into the surrounding in the process of the reaction. So we actually treat heat as one of the products for an exothermic reaction. As for endothermic reaction, endo means going in, so heat is coming in, so heat is absorbed in the forward reaction. How do we recognize that is an endothermic reaction? We look at the delta H. If the delta H has a positive value, then that is an endothermic reaction. So let's look at this example. We have a calcium carbonate, decomposition of calcium carbonate reaction. So delta H is positive 102. So positive means what? Positive means this is an endothermic reaction. So endo means heat is absorbed. So when we want to produce the product, we need heat as one of the reactant. So heat is considered as one of the reactant in the process to produce the products. So remember, endothermic heat is treated as one of the reactants. So now we can look at the effect of the changes in temperature to a system which is already at equilibrium. So we look at the first scenario. If we add heat, meaning that we try to increase the temperature. Okay, so if you have a higher temperature, means we are actually giving a lot of heat to the system. Now the system will consider this as a disturbance, and the system will try to shift to the right or to the left, whichever side, to consume the heat, because this is a stress to the system. So we have a lot of heat, so the system will try to shift so that they will offset the change. So if you have a lot of heat, they will try to consume the heat added. So we have to look at the system, whether this is an endothermic or exothermic process. So we look at the first example for A. Delta H is positive. Positive means endothermic. Endothermic means coming in. What is coming in? The heat is coming in. So we need to absorb heat. So we put the heat at the left hand side, and we treat heat as one of the reactants for this process to occur. So now let's say we increase temperature. So what will happen if you increase temperature? So automatically we know that heat will increase, because when you have more heat, temperature will increase. So the heat now is getting more in the system. So this is a disturbance. Okay, so what would the system do? The system try to consume. How to consume? We should shift to the right hand side, because when we shift to the right hand side, heat is used up as one of the reactant in order to produce the product. So this is the side to consume heat. Now how about B? B, the delta H is negative. So when the delta H is negative, this means this is an exothermic process. Exo means exit, going out. What is going out? Heat is going out. So heat is releasing from the process. So we should put the heat at which side? Left or right? Okay, should be right, because this is a product. Okay, so now if we increase temperature, it's the same thing. If we increase temperature, heat is increasing. So now we have a lot of heat. Okay, so what happened? If there is a lot of heat, so the system will try to shift to the left in order to consume the heat added to the system. Then we will look at the another scenario, which is if we remove heat. Okay, so this is a stress. You try to remove heat. According to Chatelier principles, the system will try to shift to left or right to offset the change. So if you decrease the heat, the system will try to add back the heat. Okay, so let's look at the first example. When the delta H is positive, means endo. Again, endo means we need to absorb heat, so the heat is on the reactant side. When we decrease temperature means we reduce heat. Heat is reduced, so heat is not so much. We reduce the heat, very little heat. We take out the heat actually. So the heat is not much. So what will happen? The system is not at equilibrium. So the system will try to shift to the left to increase the amount of heat in the system. Whereas for B, delta H is negative. So we know that negative is exo. So heat is regarded as a product here. And when we decrease temperature, means we decrease the amount of heat. So the heat is no more that much, but heat is very little. We remove some of the heat. Okay, so the system try to shift to add back the heat that is lost. So they will shift to the right hand side. Now bear in mind that this is the only change that would change the equilibrium constant. K value. The rest of the change, which is concentration and pressure, they actually only change the position, the equilibrium position. They will shift to the right, shift to the left, and they will re-establish. The Q will go back to the same K. For example, when Q is smaller, the Q will keep on going back to the same value of K. K value does not change for concentration and pressure. But for temperature, bear in mind, you have to remember, this change will actually change the value of K. This is proven by Van Hoff equation, which is shown here. Now this equation tells us when you have different temperature, T1, T2, your equilibrium constant will change from K1 to K2. So you don't need to remember this equation, it's just to tell you this is the only factors that actually change the value of K. The rest of the changes will not affect the value of K. They will affect the position. Yes, shift to the left, shift to the right, but they will not change the value of the K. So the calculation is not needed, so don't worry. You just need to take note of this equation. So the more important thing is we need to know what happened if we increase temperature. What happened to the K value? Does the K value increase, decrease, or are they the same? Okay, so very easy. You just remember, if you increase temperature, means a lot of heat is putting into the system, very hot. Okay, this will favor the endothermic process. So this is an endothermic process. Endothermic process is a process that actually needs heat as one of the reactant. So if you need something and you provide them something, so they must love it. Favor means loving. Right? You love something. I'm in favor of you. I love you. So if you have an endothermic process and you have a lot of heat, wow, that is very good. So if you favor the thing, the K value will increase. Okay, but if you are exothermic, exothermic means the heat is always releasing to the surrounding. So you don't like the heat actually. So if you don't like the heat, which change will actually favor the exothermic process? If you don't like the heat, then we don't give you heat. We decrease temperature, very cold, no heat. We don't give you any heat. We take away all the heat, and now you like it because you also don't like the heat. You also like to remove the heat in your reaction. So the K value will increase if you have an exothermic process. So the same thing, the opposite thing will happen when we are doing for exo and endo if we increase the temperature or temperature. So we just take note about this one. If we increase temperature, it will favor the endothermic process and the K will increase for endo. So if you decrease temperature, it doesn't favor the endo. It's not good. You like heat, but I don't give you heat, so the K will decrease for the endo. Okay, so this is something that you need to remember. Then we have the effect of catalyst. Do you remember what is a catalyst? Catalyst is something that will make something happen faster. Okay, why? Because they actually reduce the energy barrier. You have less barrier to achieve equilibrium. So the system will achieve equilibrium faster, but they have no effect on the equilibrium position. There's no shifting in order to offset the change. Okay, so let's look at one example. I have a Haber process here. This is called Haber process. So you know that this is exothermic. Exothermic means heat is released. So what kind of condition will favor exothermic process? You don't like heat, so we don't give you heat. So we try to reduce temperature. So when temperature is very low, you know that when temperature is very low, particle move very slowly, and that is not good for a system to react. So you need to add something called catalyst. This is the role of a catalyst. Iron is a catalyst in the Haber process. So when we add in iron, actually they will speed up the process to the left and to the right, because you actually speed up the process, but they actually does not change the equilibrium position, because both of the red will be increased in the same way. So bear in mind, for catalyst, there is no effect at all on the equilibrium position. So let's try to test ourselves, the understanding. Based on this equation, which of the following changes will affect the equilibrium constant? Still remember what is equilibrium constant? Equilibrium constant means K value, Kc or Kp. Okay, how does it affect? Will it be higher, lower K, or same K in the equilibrium system below? Okay, you spend a few minutes to look at this question and try to attempt this question. When you are ready, you can pause and then you can click again to review the answer. So this is the answer. Okay, let's look at this one. So we have an exothermic process. Exo means heat is released as a product. So we put the heat here first to see clearly. Means you don't like the heat. You don't want to throw away the heat in the reaction. So if you increase temperature means a lot of heat, right? A lot of heat. You increase a lot of heat. That's why your temperature will increase. So you don't like heat, but we give you a lot of heat. So this is not favorable to the reaction. So when you do this, the value of K will be lower, will decrease, because it does not favor. People don't like heat, but we give them heat. They don't like the situation. Okay, so the second one, adding catalyst, remember, only temperature will affect the value of K. The rest, no change. No matter what you do to the system, as long as it is not temperature, remember, they will never change the value of K. K value can only be changed if we change the temperature. Okay? So this is the summary for this video. So remember, if you increase temperature, it's something like if you are very hot, so you will favor endothermic process. Very hot, we try to go into a house because we like to enjoy the aircon because it's cooling. When it's very cold, you don't try to stay in a house, especially if you go out for camping. If you are very cold in the campsite, what do? You go out and you try to make the campfire, and you will feel better going outside. So cooling is favor on exothermic. Hot condition, heating, is favor for endo. And catalyst has no change.
So in this video, we have learned how a system at equilibrium responds to the change in temperature and also the adding of catalyst. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.